Sis, do you need a break? This is for Black women. I'm talking about retreats today, healing retreats for Black women. If you watch my channel, I talk a lot about Black women and toxic jobs. This conversation is for all Black women because I know as Black women, we work super hard. So, we're going to talk about retreats and when to recognize you are bone tired, like you really need a break. So, we're going to talk about that today. And you have two licensed clinical psychologists with you today. So if you don't know me already, I'm Dr. Kamani. I'm a licensed clinical psychologist, a toxic job survivor, but more importantly, I'm a toxic job liberator for Black women. I have a number of resources to support Black women in the journey of preparing yourself to leave a toxic job and to do well. So all the resources that I offer are in the description section of this video. So again, very excited today that I have another clinical psychologist with me today. And as you're coming into this room, please give this video a thumbs up. So Dr. Tina Armstrong, if you could introduce yourself, we'll go right into the conversation.
All right. Well, hello. So glad to be here. Thank you for inviting me to join you today. I'm Dr. Tina Armstrong, and I am the CEO and founder of Living Connected Psychological Inc. So we're a licensed clinic. We do therapy, individual therapy. We do digital courses, and then we do my most favorite thing in the world is bringing Black women together for liberation and healing. So we do retreats in person. And so a little bit about our work really centers around chronic stress. As a former, I was liberated. Woo, woo, thank you for your work in that. As a former, or retired now, tenure-track professor, my research was on Black women's spirituality and health. And so what I wanted to understand is how can spirituality influence our health? Because we have to figure out, okay, this health disparity gap, it is just too wide.
Yeah.
What resources do we already have? What resources can we use? So in that work, we came up with 6 basic factors, which turns into what we'll talk about today, the rooted method on how we can help to decrease our stress, which ultimately gives us not only physical health, but mental health and spiritual health.
Yeah, I'm so glad you bring up stress because as Black women, we're often experiencing chronic stress, and experiencing that chronic stress can impact us mentally, physically, and spiritually.
Absolutely.
So, and I think the way we were raised for many of us as Black women, we were raised that we have to work twice as hard to get half as much. And we just have to work, 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 work. We have to overperform. We have to get all the degrees, all the credentials. So we just do these things because that's expected of us. And we often do it very, very well. And on top of that, we have other responsibilities. We have family responsibilities. We have community responsibilities. We have friendship responsibilities, all these different things. And most of us are juggling, right?
Yep.
So I remember, when I was in graduate school, people would say, "How are you?" And I would say, "I'm busy." That's not a feeling, right? But that's what I was doing. And I think a lot of Black women are disconnected from how they are feeling in connection to what they are doing. So can we talk a little bit more about why do you think it's difficult for many Black women to acknowledge, I am tired? I am tired. What do you think that is about?
I think there's societal pressures. I think there's this strong sense of responsibility, which comes from a good place, but when we overutilize it, it becomes toxic.
Yeah.
Also, there's just this long-standing cultural narrative that around strength and what strength means. So much so that there's, oodles and oodles of research articles and a lot of people doing a lot of good work around the superwoman syndrome. The fact that we think that somehow we have to do this now, where it began, absolutely, it began in places that were serious challenge for us, right? It began when you think about as Black women, we have always had to work. We came to this nation working.
Yeah. Yes.
That's how we came here.
Yes.
And because of that, not only did we work in the fields alongside men, not only did we work in the master's house and raise and care for their families, but then after all of that, we came back and took care of our families and our communities. And while that was something that I think was what we did in that time to survive, I think there are better ways for us going forward. And those same beliefs that we pass around, that we have to work twice as hard, we really believe that.
Right.
I believe that. I remember, quick story. When I first my second academic job, I was an administrator. So I was hired by an institution to be an administrator. And it was just too much because long story short, it was just too much. So they realized it and they got me a coach. And so I had this young, she must have been 20 something. She probably wasn't, but she felt like this young 20 something, young white woman, excited about her work. And she's like, you can do this. This will be great. And I mean, just with all kinds of enthusiasm. And I was looking at her in my mind thinking, it's because you have privilege, you have this, you have that. It was what I was telling her. I could not see that I could actually create a job for myself, because she was trying to get me to see that I could create a job for myself where my job actually gave me energy to do the things that I loved. And I was like, no, that doesn't work for me. That doesn't work for people like me. I have to work harder. I mean, I did the thing. I have like 7 degrees, advanced degrees.
Right.
Over top of my my BA, right? And it was because that was the messages that I got. That's what I saw around me when I saw other Black women who was doing really, really well. They had several degrees behind their name. They were in several organizations. They were doing the thing. But that's not the only way to do it. And that is the quickest way to burn out, to do it that way.
Yes.
Yeah. So I look back now on that coach, and I actually found her on LinkedIn. And I said, you know what? When I worked with you, I couldn't see it. But do you know, it's almost like 12, 13 years later, now I am actually living the dream where the work that I'm doing is actually giving fuel to me to take care of my family, to take care of myself. I feel energized because I work with Black women.
Yes, I feel the same exact way, Dr. Tina. We're going to talk about that a little later. Yes. So we talked, and I really appreciate you talking about the historical connection, because I think that as Black women, we need to understand why so much of our identity has been tied into work. And I'm quoting Stephanie Perry, who said, a lot of these jobs are, and how we're responding is fruit of the slavery tree. So that commitment to the job, that feeling like you always have to be working, all these other things, feel like you can't leave the job, like you can't leave the plantation, fruit of the slavery tree. So it's important for us to look at the historical connection. So let's think about, in addition to the historical issues, the messages we've been told as Black women, Black girls, what are some of the other stressors that you think are impacting Black women at this point?
Oh, yeah. I mean, there's the workplace bias, right? The fact that we even have to code switch, that wears and tears on us.
Yes.
There's that, again, the whole strong woman, Black woman expectation. Like sometimes, I mean, it's common knowledge that when a business or industry is in difficult times and leadership and management, who do they look for to bring
the Black woman? The Black woman.
Absolutely.
She's going to turn it around. She's going to work super hard.
Absolutely. And there's some part of that makes us feel good, that makes us feel needed and wanted and appreciated and affirmed. But there's a whole other side of it that kills us.
Yes. Yes.
There's also the health conditions, right, that are linked to the chronic stress. So it's like the chicken and the egg situation happening because of all these things we're taking on. There's also the double jeopardy in leadership roles, being Black
Speak to that.
and being a woman. And so the unique pressures that we receive because of that are different than say a white female leader. You know, we experience that. Then there's the financial pressures and limited support networks. I mean, typically a Black woman in leadership, she's not only caring for her immediate family. There are responsibilities to extended family, sometimes financial responsibilities to extended family. I was joking with someone the other day, true story. I'm a clinical psychologist, you're a psychologist, but I have family members who will call me about medical conditions, will call me about legal stuff, like anything and everything that has to do outside, because they recognize that I had education. So, but I have to, you know, gently guide them and say, hey, but that becomes pressure.
Yeah.
That becomes another. And then there's just the sheer amount of caretaking that we've been socialized to do and that some of us really enjoy doing. Whether it's our own immediate families or extended families, we become caretakers in the community. We become caretakers to our colleagues and to our peers. And I mean, it's just there. And then, of course, there's microaggressions, just the daily weathering. the
Mm-hmm.
daily weathering and how that impacts us. And then we can't forget the cultural stigma that still exists around mental health. It's,
Mm-hmm.
especially when I'm working with a faith-based population, there is still a lot of stigma connected to mental health.
Can you
In
speak more
terms,
about that?
sure, a lot of the stigma has to do with things like, if if my faith was right, someone literally said this to me. If my faith was
Mm.
right, I shouldn't be experiencing X.
Mm.
I'm like, oh, really?
Mm.
So when Jesus had to go away from the crowds to have some quiet and alone time, talk to me about how you experience his faith in that moment. And
Mm.
not in a shaming way, not in a
Mm-hmm.
degrading way, but just in a way that helps the conversation and the
Mm-hmm.
reflection begin to happen. Or
Yeah.
pointing to other scriptures that talk about the need for rest, the
Mm.
need to take care of our body. So really
Mm-hmm.
helping. So I know I'm jumping into the solutions because I get excited about
No, no,
that.
no. Yeah.
But really helping to bring a holistic faith. I think that's
Mm-hmm.
what my research and who I am can offer. Because sometimes, and again, the historical piece, we
Mm-hmm.
didn't have control of our physical bodies
Right.
when we were enslaved.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But if you want to know some true theology, you go look at the slave narratives. Now that is where theology lives.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, but even now, because of that historical component, there's ways in which we still try to bifurcate our spirituality from our physicalness, from wellness, from emotions,
Mm-hmm.
recognizing that at some point we didn't have control over that. And so
Mm-hmm.
we had to, we're good at trying to bridge that cognitive dissonance. Where there's that
Mm-hmm.
dissonance, we're trying to figure out how to make it right.
Mm-hmm.
And so there is still that piece that is there. And so there's this bifurcation. I care about my spiritual health, but I'm like, your
Mm-hmm.
spiritual health is your mental health. It is
Yeah.
your physical health. It is your
Yeah.
emotional health. It is your
Yeah.
relationships. It's
Yeah.
all connected.
Yeah. And I'm not, I'm spiritual, but I'm not very religious.
Mhm.
But I'm assuming that any religious tradition talks about we don't want you to always suffer and be in
Yes.
pain. And so thinking about that as well, it's just a way to kind of bridge. Yes, spirituality is a form of healing and
Hmm.
it can be a protective factor, but
Hmm.
also it's recognizing when you might need some additional support and being okay
Absolutely.
with that and not shaming ourselves in doing so. And what would you say in general, the religious community, the Black religious community, do you feel like over time there's been more acceptance about mental health and really addressing the stigma of mental health?
I would absolutely say 100% yes. Um, and for a number of reasons, I believe. But I think there's more leadership in the churches who have had their own struggles and who have been
Mm,
honest about their own struggles. And I think in them being honest about their struggles, then it
mhm,
actually starts to illuminate the ways in which they look at scripture and the
mhm,
ways in which
mhm,
they actually start to find, oh wow, this
mhm,
was in the scriptures. Oh, okay.
mhm,
I also think that there's more integrated programs, so where people are who are being trained to be in ministry are also being
mhm,
exposed to psychology. I think
mm,
there's also more psychologists, and I know part of it too is the circle that I hang out with because I was at Fuller Graduate School of Psychology and teaching there. I know a lot of clinicians who also got MDivs, which is a degree, a master's degree in divinity,
mm,
which a lot of clergy, people going into the ministry utilize. So they're preaching, literally
mhm,
preaching and teaching this from pulpits that are not only just in static environments, but because of COVID, now almost every place of worship has some type of virtual
mhm,
component that is still
mhm,
around. And so
mhm.
now I think more people are getting the message that it's a holistic thing. It's
Yeah,
not just this spiritual thing that's siloed, that's cut off from who we are as being. We are in bodies. We are
yeah,
embodied. How
yeah,
do how do we live from this place? And when we do
yeah.
try to cut off that, that's when you get a lot of trouble. That's when some
True.
problems come. So
True, true. So I remember like images that I might see about, like a black woman exhausted, but she's still dragging on. And then I would hear things, particularly more recent, in terms of like their hustle and grind culture, or this quote, I'll sleep when I'm dead, those kind of things, like normalizing that sense of moving past that point of exhaustion, just keep going, going, going. And the black women I've worked with clinically have really gotten to a point, they're almost at a breaking point
Yeah.
because they're so exhausted, but they have not given themselves the permission to rest. Can you talk, Dr. Armstrong, about your own experiences? Because you said that you on the other side, you've liberated,
Yep.
just
Yep.
as I've liberated from a situation, a
Mhm.
job situation. But can you talk about, for you, what that experience was like in terms of pivoting? Because when on my channel, I really emphasize to Black women that when you're in a toxic job, the first thing it's important to recognize that you're in a toxic situation that is harming you. The second thing is to know you're not alone, that there's other Black women around the world having similar experiences. And the third thing is to know there's a way out. So there's different options, right?
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
I want Black women to know that, but I want them to see by example with me and all my guests that there's different ways to pivot. So I would love to hear from you. How have you pivoted? Like what was the trajectory? Like where did you come from
Mhm.
that necessitated the pivot, and how did you pivot? And also for the Black women clients you have, how have you supported them in that pivot as well?
Absolutely. Great question. Thank you for asking. And in my head, I'm like, okay, which of the stories am I going to tell? Because I've had so many different pivots because of toxic situations, but I'll tell the most recent one.
Okay.
Um, and so for some time, I did really like the work that I was doing,
Mm-hmm.
being a faculty member, or like parts of the work that I was doing. I love being a faculty member. I love my research, Black women's spirituality and health in the lab. And because of that, I attracted a lot of Black students. So I had a
Mm.
lab of 8 Black doctoral students.
Wow.
And and they weren't all in the same cohort either. So they were
Okay.
across cohorts. So it was just phenomenal. And then we did a lot
Mm.
of stuff together, and I loved it.
Mm-hmm.
And then one day, it was actually in the fall of 2022.
Mm-hmm.
In the fall of 2022, routine doctor's appointment. So at this time, I was the program chair, I believe. Yeah, I was program chair. I was the director of clinical training. So those two things should not be in the same job description.
Wow.
Plus, I was a tenure track faculty, right? Had a lab and taught. So all
Wow.
those things should not go together,
No.
but they did. Routine doctor's appointment, mind you, I do take care of my health in the sense that I go to my appointments.
Mm-hmm.
I don't reschedule them. I show up.
Mm-hmm.
I do what I'm
Mm-hmm.
supposed to do. So
Mm-hmm.
in that spring, I had just
Mm-hmm.
had my yearly exam. Everything's great. My doctor is like, "See you in a year." Like she's
Hmm.
like, "Your labs, everything is so great. I know I won't see you before a year." And that has
Hmm.
been our routine. Our routine.
Okay.
Um, but something had happened and I wasn't quite feeling right. I wasn't sure. So I made an appointment, came
Mm-hmm.
in for what I thought was a routine appointment. And
Mm-hmm.
she's like, "Have you been running around a lot?" And this was after class. I ducked in before I pick up the kids, before I go
Mm-hmm.
home and cook dinner, all the stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, "Yeah, I just left. I was
Mm-hmm.
commuting. So, I was in the car." She's like, "Your blood pressure is really high and this is unusual for you." I'm like, "Yeah." So I sat there. She's like, "Just sit here for a while. We'll take it again." It was high again. I've never struggled
Mm.
with high blood pressure.
Mm.
She's like, "Tina, it's so high that right now I am considering if you need to actually be admitted to the hospital."
Wow.
It was that high.
That's scary.
That is scary. This is like 6 months after I had my exam and everything's fine. And I've not had
Wow.
that issue before.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So then she began to ask me questions about work. And I was like, "Oh, work is great. Home is good, just stuff." And then finally she's like, "Tina," she's like, "You said everything is great and good." And she's like, "I know you know this, but are you implementing the things that you know?"
Mm.
And then it went from head to heart to
Mm.
recognizing, well, actually at work, maybe things aren't so good. Maybe there's
Mm-hmm.
too much stuff going on. Maybe they're
Right.
trying to help, all the stuff started helping. started happening.
Overextending yourself.
Completely, because I was involved at work, involved in kids' school, and involved in all the extracurriculars that they did, involved in my own sorority, involved in other organizations, community and civic organizations. And it was too much, and it was wearing me down. And on the second doctor's appointment, she's like, look, and she was being half serious because we kind of go tit for tat back and forth. We just had that relationship over time. She's like, are you going to give up your husband? Are you going to give up being a parent? Are you going to give up being a professor? Or do you want to die?
Oh, wow. Point blank.
Point blank.
Ooh, now that's a sobering question.
And I just sat there.
Wow.
I sat there and was like, something has to change drastically.
Wow.
And from that moment on, I talked with my partner and we strategized how we're going to help me to give up the job, because clearly I wasn't, I love my spouse and in our relationship. I'm not giving up my kids.
Yes.
I waited too long. I'm one of those, oh goodness, those parents of advanced maternal age by the time I have these babies. So I'm like, we ain't giving them up.
Right.
So yeah, that's what really started to kick me into gear to shift. I had already, there was other off ramps. I mean, after that moment, I started to reflect. I was like, oh, that was.
So were there other signs you had missed?
No, there wasn't signs that I had missed in that particular, because I mean, that's why high blood pressure is a silent killer. Because even my cortisol, just a few months prior was within normal range.
Interesting. Wow.
All my labs were clear. So
yeah, but that chronic stress eventually caught up to you.
It did. It caught up to me, and it was about to take me out.
Wow. And thank God you had gone to the doctor that day.
Exactly. Exactly. And I was like, you know what? That will not be my story, and it will not be the story of the women I want to come into contact with.
Okay. Can you talk to us about the pivot? What did the pivot look like?
Yes.
Black women who watch my channel, I think the vast majority of Black women who watch my channel are still in a toxic job. And so part of what I hope that I'm doing for them is providing video after video after video for them to reflect, but also for them to start thinking about resources, because I think a lot of them are so fearful of leaving. And I understand that because I was there too. And I was so scared of what was I going to do? How was I going to make my money? Right. Which is crazy, because when I came into the toxic job, I was a licensed clinical psychologist. Right. So there was nothing the job gave me in terms of credentials or anything, but it was that fear. So can you talk to the Black women watching now? What did the pivot look like? So what were the steps you took to help yourself pivot?
Yeah, I think the biggest step that I took is giving myself space. That was the first major important step. And for me, I know in some ways it can feel like a luxury, but my doctor was like, you're not going back to work. She gave me, there was some time, because literally there were some things that I needed to do to manage my health. And so, being able
to take a leave, you have to take a leave.
Being able to take a leave gave me time to start mentally preparing for what my next steps are. Because I know if I try to rush through things or move too quickly, I would have been overwhelmed, and it would have sent me and my personality type into anxiety. Anxiousness would have been my default. So the space actually allowed me time to reflect. It allowed me time to draw in my community. I had another girlfriend who had also was navigating leaving academia. I had another girlfriend who was a CEO, and so she was leaving her company that she did really great things for. So I had people in my circle. That was the other thing.
Awesome.
So I had the time. Then I began to bring these people close, and literally once a week, because my girlfriend was up north, we would get on Zoom and chat about our process.
That's amazing. So you had an accountability group.
Oh my
so there
God.
were other Black women that you knew, who you trusted, who were going through a similar process, which can be so not only validating, but you feel supported. So did you experience any fear?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Tons of fear. And then there was hidden fear. Like, and and this may not have been at the beginning, but not having a W-2 coming in, like I've had a W-2 since I was 17 years old. I have
Wow.
worked, gotten a W-2. It's like, whoa, what is my identity without this?
Yes.
I also
And the
recognize,
structure and predictability.
yes,
Like every so and so,
yes,
you get a paycheck. Yes.
exactly. And I had have a partner who was like, look, your health is most important. W-2, you know, he's W-2. So insurance, all the stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So I recognize that could be even magnified for some folks who don't have that support in that area. But
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I had that support to where if I wanted to stay home and homeschool my kids, like I
Mm-hmm.
could do that. So
Mm-hmm.
I had that, but there were still fears because of all that I have accumulated over the years and thinking about, well, who am I? And that was an identity question. If you would have asked me prior to my transition, I wouldn't have thought that I held on to the titles that I had.
Mm-hmm.
But as I began to think about them leaving and as I began to talk to elders in my family, they were trying to
Mm-hmm.
find a way for me to still hold on to that professor role and do some things. But I
Mm.
recognized, I was like, oh, I am too, because it was about who am I? What is my identity? Um,
Can I ask you something?
yes.
Why do you think your family, and again, I think this is so
Uh-huh.
rich because a lot of us have family members from older
Yep.
generations and their perceptions about jobs are you get that job, you stay there if it's a good job, and you just get that pension. And especially if they feel like it's a status job,
Yep.
they might encourage you even more. What was your experience in relation to your family about them not necessarily wanting you to lead this high status job?
It was exactly what you said. It was all of those things. They they may not know what a psychologist versus a psychiatrist versus a social worker versus they don't know all the ins and outs of that. So they call
Yeah.
me psychiatrist sometimes, psychologist, all of that. But they
Uh-huh.
did know what a professor was, and that
Right.
was a high status job. And so
Yes.
I think it was the fear of that. But let me tell
Mm.
you another story that
Mhm.
really helped me. So
Mhm.
my bonus son, he did computer engineering undergrad.
Mhm.
So he's a programmer. And he got a job and my husband, he's a civil engineer. So he designs bridges and he's on the design side and on the contractor side. And why that's
Mhm.
important is because we grew up with these very strict guidelines about jobs. You get a job, you hold on to that job, and you don't leave that job unless
Mm-mm.
you get kicked out or unless you
Mm-mm.
somehow are going to go against your morals or your priorities or values, but you stay, right? So that's
Mhm.
what you were talking about.
Mhm.
But check this 23-year-old. He gets this job making more money than any of us can possibly dream. Like, okay,
Wow.
we college is paid for, everything's paid for, but he's making all this money. But he knew he wanted to work for Google. And he didn't get Google the first job out of undergrad. But what he did was he went and he worked for like 6 months and then he
Mhm.
quit his job. He worked for 6 months and he quit his job. And for 6 months straight, he was in the library building his portfolio, doing his thing. And now he's working where he wants to work in said job.
Wow. Okay.
And what I learned from him was not to be beholden to
Mm.
that job, but beholden to one's visions and purpose and where you see yourself. And if that
Mhm.
young man did not transform, I mean, he was part of that story when I was cobbling together my friends and my community. I tell him, I'm like, your story inspired me. It
Mm.
inspired me to shift, to not be beholden to a
Mhm.
title, not be beholden to a good job, not beholden
Mhm.
to benefits, but beholden
Mhm.
to the vision and the purpose for which I am called.
Yeah. Okay. So that was you had community, you
Mm-hmm,
had support from your spouse, you
mm-hmm,
had the doctor in terms of taking a leave of absence. So these were
mm-hmm,
some of the steps, right? Some
mm-hmm,
of the supports.
mm-hmm.
And I'd say to Black women all the time, if you're able to take a leave of absence, please do so. I did that as well because you're right. It gives you that clarity. You get some rest, and you're able to like really, really exit plan. What about for Black women who are not able to take a leave of absence? What
Mm-hmm.
would you suggest for them?
Absolutely. I would say how people talk about their side job. I would say your side job is you developing your exit
Mm,
strategy.
mm.
Whether and it's about you knowing how much do you really have to give in your place of employment, because most Black women are given 150%.
Right. And
And
everybody else giving 23%.
okay. And that's why we're given 150, because we see all the things that could be done. Oh, I can do that. Oh, I can do
Yes.
that. Oh, I can do that.
Yes.
Well, you can do that, but that doesn't mean you have to do it. So
Yes.
I would say if you don't have that, then you still need to find a way to make time. And that
Mm-hmm.
means not as much time. Don't give the job that you are leaving all of your time and attention.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You need some time for you. So carve out time and do it faithfully. And that time could look like, it could look like you doodling. It could look like you journaling. It could look like you playing in your
Resting, taking
garden.
naps.
Yeah, it could look like you resting. It could
Mm-hmm.
look like you doing a yoga class. Like
Mm-hmm.
that is important because that creates spaciousness.
Mm-hmm.
That
Mm-hmm.
helps to create clarity.
Yeah.
That helps your body. That helps
Yeah.
all of you.
Yeah.
Prayer time, like all that is important. That becomes the priority. And also, I would say, thinking about what it is that you want to do and what's
Mm-hmm.
the low hanging fruit. Like for me, I was already seeing clients because after George Floyd, I'm like, okay, look, I got too many skills to be sitting up in here just writing these
Mm-hmm.
wonderful papers that go into these
Mm-hmm.
tombs that not one Black woman is going to read, except for my
Mm.
mentors who are like, you know, or my
Yeah.
students who co-wrote. So I was like, no. So I started seeing clients again then.
Mm-hmm.
And so I
Mm-hmm.
had a small practice. So then I was like, you
Mm-hmm.
know what? Oh, wow, this is great. I actually, oh, goodness, this is different.
Mm-hmm.
It gives me energy. Oh, wow, I'm
Yeah.
excited. I'm waiting for
Yeah.
this time. So
Yeah.
then that's where I knew, like, this is where
You
you
can
can.
pivot. Yes, I just want to emphasize something. First of all, it's so interesting how our stories are so similar because when I was at the toxic job, when I was thinking about pivoting, I thought about the lowest hanging fruit. Okay, what skill do I already have that I can easily pivot to and replace that income?
Mm-hmm.
Telehealth. Oh,
Yep.
I'm a therapist. I can
Yep.
just pivot to that. And then it just grew. And so it's important for Black women as you're watching this, think about what are the skills that you already utilize at that job that maybe you can start doing on your own or doing somewhere else. Maybe it's a side hustle, whatever that is, just start replacing your income because then that will give you the sense of confidence
Yep.
as you start replacing that income. The other thing I wanted to ask you was I want to go back to family because family can be so influential in our decisions. So, did you have family members who were projecting their fears onto you, right? So they said, no, don't leave. That's, you're a professor, blah, blah. Did any of them, friends or family,
Mhm.
project their fears onto you about what might happen if you left that job?
Oh, absolutely.
And what did they
Absolutely.
say? What did they
I mean,
say?
it was like, um, will you, I don't know. You know what? To be honest, I don't really remember because when they were saying it, it was so clear that it was about them and not about me that it was like I almost felt like I was being their therapist. I was just trying to reassure them. I was like, okay, I've been a single mother, I've been an adoptive mother, I've been a stepmother, I'm a biological mother. I've just been in all kinds of scenarios.
Yeah.
And for me, and also what was helpful for me is my faith. And it was like
Mm-hmm.
I have seen God in all of the variety of places that I've been in my life. And not
Yes.
to say that I'm anything like Paul, but I have learned to really count it all joy. And I have
Mm.
really found favor in all these different scenarios that people who know me today have no idea. I mean, they would be like, who are you talking about if they heard some of the past iterations of what my life looked like? But
Mm-hmm.
no, I was confident. And for me, the most important people in my
Mm-hmm.
life were supporting me. So
Uh,
kind of the people around the fringes, yeah, the core people were like, you know what, I don't know exactly what's happening, but I
mm-hmm.
trust you and your relationship with God to know that you're doing what's best for you and your
Yeah.
family.
And people are seeing you like more on a regular basis, like your day to day, or they have regular contact with you, so they know how the job is impacting you. And
Exactly.
it's interesting because my mother did not, she was not happy at all. I
Mhm.
told her I was about to leave that good job,
Yep.
and she couldn't understand it, because she retired from a good government job, and she just could not understand it. And so I had to make a decision of not to talk to her about this anymore, right? I
Mm.
knew she was not able to hear what I was saying. She
Mhm.
couldn't. She just couldn't.
Yeah.
And so for me, and I want to say this to Black women, if you're in a situation where family and or friends are saying things to you, they're projecting their fears onto you, they're saying, girl, don't leave, you're going to end up homeless, these really bad things are going to happen to you, you have to recognize these are not the people you're going to share with them about your plans to leave.
Mhm.
You have to say, you know what, I hear them, but I'm not going to tell them these things. So you find a community of people who can
Yep.
support you, and or go to therapy. You have a therapist who can talk to you about what are those fears and can support you in the process. Because what we don't want to happen is you dread a job or you're being harmed by a job and you stay because you're concerned about what other people are going to think about you, and you have all these fears. Now, the other part you said that was really interesting too was about the identity. So your
Mhm.
identity got wrapped up into the job.
Yeah.
What would you say to Black women? Because it sounds like you were able to say, you were able to look at your bonus son. You were like, wait a minute, he was able to pivot and do these things. I'm not going to attach uh, my ability to do things I want in my life based upon a job or job
Mhm.
title. Okay. So, what would you say to Black women? Let's say the Black women who are high performing, and let's say they have excelled in their career and they really identify themselves in terms of their job position. So, you meet them and they say, oh, I'm blah, blah, blah. I'm so and so, and I do, like, this is what I do
Mhm.
for my
Mhm.
profession. So, what would you say to Black women who are like that, who have that fused identity with their professional
I
work?
would say one, it's important to really recognize and own that. And sometimes we only recognize it when we start testing it out. And
Mm-hmm.
safe places to test it out may be in a therapy room, it may be
Mm-hmm.
with a small group. Just
Mm-hmm.
start testing it out. And then also start to understand why and how these things have become a part of your identity.
Mm.
And what I discovered for myself is like, oh, I can take this part away and I'm still okay. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I'm no longer a professor, a
Mm-hmm.
tenure track professor, but I'm still very much a teacher. And so
And
what
still a psychologist in other ways. Yeah.
absolutely. And
Mm-hmm.
what I realized that actually I wasn't so well, yeah, no, I was attached to the professor identity, but once I was able to distinguish the skill set, like, oh, I still
Mm-hmm.
get to teach, or
Mm-hmm.
oh, I'm still getting to do the research work that I love to do.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I get to do it in alternative ways that are
Mm-hmm.
still very meaningful to me and the community
Mm-hmm.
that I want to serve. So I would encourage that person to understand what is it, how do you want your life to speak?
Mm-hmm. Hmm. Okay.
And how do you allow that to come through your identity?
Hmm. Okay.
Does
And it
your
may
life,
not just be through the job,
yes,
right?
it's
That
not
that's
just
one
the
element.
job.
We talked about it being whole. Yes, it's a whole person. Yes, yes, yes. So, Dr. Armstrong, I know that the questions veered a little bit different, but I will promise, ladies, we're going to get to the part of our retreats. So, for the Black women that you work with, the Black women clients, because I've talked a
Mhm.
lot about the Black women clients that I work with, what have been some of the barriers that they've expressed in therapy about difficulties leaving a toxic job? So they come in, they talk about the job, they really don't like the job, they dread all these things.
Mhm.
What are some of the barriers that you've experienced with them in therapy about them leaving?
Yeah, I think the priority is guilt about prioritizing themselves.
Mm,
Also the fear of appearing weak or not strong. Like, if I was
mm,
strong enough, then I could handle all this stuff. I was like, you
mm,
probably could, but do you want to? Do you
mm,
have to?
mm-hmm,
Um, Also, I would say, what else would I say? Um, Other barriers. Oh, how they see themselves. Oh, that's a
Mm-hmm.
huge one. That's a
Mm-hmm.
huge one. So it's almost like you buy into your own hype about your
Mm-hmm.
identity. And so
Mm-hmm.
then it becomes really challenging to try to separate from that because you bought into that. And so, what does it mean if I don't stay? What does it mean if I leave? So,
Mm-hmm.
I think those three have been. I'm trying to think any other barriers.
Well, we talk about the fears, right? The
Yeah.
financial fears, and
Uh-huh,
how am I going
uh-huh.
to replace my income, and
Hmm.
how are people going to see me? So
Hmm.
all of those things in terms of really centering them about what do you want for your life,
Yep.
and letting them know about the different options, and supporting them in going in those directions to find out what those options are or get support, and be in community with people who can support them with that.
Yep. And I think the biggest factor standing in the way is just that whole belief that we don't have time. I don't have no time to figure it out. That whole busyness. You talked about that.
Mm-hmm.
As a
Mm-hmm.
graduate, I'm busy. I'm busy. I'm
Mm-hmm.
busy. And this whole idea of doing versus being. But I
Oh,
mean, that's the
yes.
historical component. But it's
Yeah.
like we pass that down. We pass this. It
Yeah.
doesn't have to be that way. I remember
Yeah.
I was like today years old when I found out. I mean, I wasn't really today years old, but you know what I mean. It was when I found out that actually there's not more black men in, what was it? They were just saying that just the dearth of black men in college. And actually,
Hmm.
when I start reading some of the literature around it, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is some misinformation that we keep passing around. Now, yes,
Mhm.
the numbers are lower than we would like to see them, but just
Mhm.
some of the misinformation that we pass around and that we
Mhm.
pass on then become part of our own limiting beliefs and
Mhm.
thinking.
Mhm. And part of the limited beliefs, because that leads me to talk about the retreats, is,
Uh-huh.
I've heard Black women say, like, if I say, do you take time to rest, or do you take time to do fun things? That some of them will say, I don't have time for that. I don't have
Mhm.
time for that.
Mhm.
That's for white women. That's not for me.
Mhm.
Right. So not even believing that rest or anything else is possible for them. Or what I hear them say is, you know what? I'm gonna take a great vacation. I'm waiting for my vacation. I'm waiting for retirement. So it's like these waiting points way out there. So what are some practical steps that Black women can take, because I feel like it's kind of maybe like a progression for them to be
Oh,
ready
absolutely.
for retreat, right? So,
Yeah.
what are some of the progressive kind of things they can do for, because it's more than self care? So, what are the things that they can do to really center and honor I need to rest,
Yep.
as they move into that progression of taking a particular amount of time for themselves as a retreat?
Yeah. No, I like to think of self care more as an opportunity to regulate our nervous systems. So,
Mm.
yes, you can get your nails done, and yes, you
Mm-hmm.
can get your, some of the things, and even massages do help to regulate our nervous system, but we
Mm-hmm.
can't get one massage every year and think that's going to help regulate our nervous system,
Right.
So, but it's a step. It is a step.
Yes.
So
Yes.
let me start. So, what are some practical things? Start small, and be
Mm-hmm.
consistent.
Mm-hmm.
That is where you're going to start to see something shift for you if you start small and are able to stick to it. So
Mm-hmm.
it could be like daily me time, 10 to 15 minutes a day. Something simple that you enjoy doing for yourself. So it could be that cup of tea. And as all women, as we start to age, honey, it is in the stretching. The stretching is what helps our bodies.
Mm-hmm.
So whether, and yes, it's good to run, it's good to lift
Mm-hmm.
weights, all those things are important. But if you're not there yet already,
Mm-hmm.
start with stretching.
Hmm. Okay.
Stretching causes you to slow down, it causes you to
Mm-hmm.
breathe. So, whatever
Mm-hmm.
that me time is, 10 to 15 minutes. I would also say, now this is challenging, but I
Mm-hmm.
think we can start doing it, is learning to say no.
Mm.
Kindly,
Oh.
but firmly.
Can I say something about that too?
Please,
Because
please.
for us, sometimes we say, "Oh, I'm gonna tell them no," but then we end up doing it because people are so used to us doing these
Yep.
certain things that they'll keep asking, 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 and then
Mhm.
to get them to be quiet, we'd be like, "Okay, fine, I'll do it this last time." But we're reinforcing them to keep doing that. So boundaries is so important, but I think many of us struggle with that.
Yeah, yeah. And we do work around in the retreat around that, learning how to say no. But also, I would say setting a weekly self-care appointment on your calendar. And you get to determine. So at this point, if your self-care regime does not include regulating your nervous system, that's okay. Start where you are. What might self-care look like for you? That one weekly appointment. Maybe it's your own homemade facial. You got an avocado in your fridge. You got some egg whites. You got some oatmeal. What do you already have? I mean, we all have internet usually, or we can go to the public library if you don't have it, and you can have access. Find what ingredients in your house can you make a scrub out of? Can you make a facial? Can you do some self-massaging techniques? Find something for you and schedule it. Again, something small but consistent.
Yeah.
One of the biggest things is breathing. Talking about regulating your nervous system, giving yourself time to pause, breath. We all have that.
Yeah.
That is where we can start.
Yeah.
If you can't start anywhere else, start with some belly breathing in through the nose, 4 count. Hold it for 4 counts and then blow it out as if you're blowing through a straw, blowing out a candle for 4 counts. And just do that. Do that for just a couple of minutes. And notice how your body shifts. Notice how your emotions, notice how even your ability to be more attuned spiritually. Because that breath causes you to be present in the here and now. And when you're present, then you're not thinking about the past, right? Which fuels all kinds of depression. And you're not thinking about the future, which is usually a source of anxiety and worry. But focusing on being here and now where your feet are planted.
Yes. Yeah, I really like how you talked about low cost options too, because that's another thing that I think Black women say. Not only do I know how to tell them I have money, but it's self-care stuff, that's not for me. But you're talking about there are some cheap or free way you can go outside, right? So one of the things you can do, you can just breathe, like that's free. So don't discount or say, no, I can't do that. So let's talk about the progression of Black women giving ourselves permission to these practical steps up into going into retreat. And I guess maybe we could talk about what is the value to Black women for going to a healing retreat?
Absolutely. So for Black women, one of the biggest things that I have found with the women that attend our retreats is, one, they often feel isolated. They feel, and you talked about that too, about how you feel like you're the only one going through these things. And somehow there's something wrong with me, or something I didn't do right, or something bad, or, there's all these reasons that we concoct in our own minds about why we are feeling the way we're feeling or in the situation that we're in. And so being able to be outside of that and connect with others, and you're like, wait, I don't even know you, but you have my same story? Like, how is that? Then you begin to recognize that it's not about you. Or about something that you did or didn't do. It's about these systems that are broken, that we often are becoming a part of. And so then we learn some tools about how do you navigate these spaces in ways that hold your identity and who you are as an individual intact. So communal, 1. 2, you get to learn some really practical skills and tools. A long time ago, we used to think that a lot of these things, that either you're born with it or you're not. And the reality is that most things can be taught and fostered over time with consistent application. And so taking time in a retreat allows you to have an extended opportunity within the context of others to practice these tools, to learn new ways of operating. And it's wonderful to see the variety of ways that people will interpret the same thing and actualize that thing. So then you may be stuck like, I'm not sure how I would do this thing. But then here it is right here, 6 other women who share your story is talking about what they're doing and how they're doing it. And you're like, oh yeah, maybe I can add this and do a little of that, and then this will be my routine. and how I can show up. So it's a way that we also learn from others. And then also it forces us to pause. If you get nothing else out of the retreat, you have paused and prioritized yourself.
Wow, that's really giving ourselves permission. Really giving ourselves permission. So, can you talk a little bit about who are the ideal people for the retreat? Who is the retreat for?
Yeah, the retreat is for high performing Black professional women. And how I came to that particular targeted group is because doing the research that I did, we
Mhm.
looked at a variety of Black women. We found that usually these high performing Black women are isolated. So they're the one or one of very few within their department, within their industry, within their work location.
Mhm.
And so because of that, they find themselves doing way more than anybody else would do.
Mm.
And because we already talked about the superwoman schema, right? There's a
Right.
way in which we hold this responsibility to give back, which, I think that's beautiful if it's not in excess, right?
Right.
But because we're get this image. We're holding the door open for others. We're
Mhm.
holding people up, and we're
Mhm.
being accountable all at the same time.
Right, right, right.
So
And we
you
feel responsible for the organization doing well. One of my
yeah,
good friends, Dr. Monica Cox, who's also my spelling sister, said we don't own these plantations, but we act like we do.
hello, giving
Yes,
them everything we get, all the blood, the sweat, and the
yes,
tears.
yes,
Yes,
yes, yes.
yes, because we have
Mm-hmm.
that sense of responsibility. So this retreat is about how do you turn that inward where you have that sense of responsibility to yourself? How do
Okay.
you reframe that? Because I believe that that is God given. That is something that not everybody has. But I
Mm-hmm.
have yet to meet a Black woman, and I'm sure they exist because they probably
Mm-hmm.
exist in all cultures. But I have
Mm-hmm.
not met her yet, who is only concerned about herself. There is some other population, some group, something that they are involved in and a part of that they care about. And
Yeah.
so again, why we focus on this population, because we also realize that this is a critical role, because if they're not there holding these doors open, guess what? We're not coming through those doors.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And so if they really like what they're doing and are enjoying it, I want to make sure they have the resources in the toolkit to do it in a way that does not cost them personally. Although we talk a lot about resilience, there is a
Mm-hmm.
cost to resilience. And
What's the
that
cost? Please speak on that.
cost is burnout. That
Yes.
cost is spiritual dilapidation. That
Yes.
cost is physical illness. That cost
Mm-hmm.
is strained relationships. That cost,
Depression,
oh,
anxiety,
all of that. Yes.
PTSD.
All
Yes.
of that. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yes. Oh, how can I not mention all the mental health concerns that are a cost to that?
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
the relational cost. And not just the relationship with others, but the cost of relationship to ourselves and
Mm.
how we see ourselves
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
how we feel about ourselves.
Yeah. Like workhorses. So if you say to yourself, I don't have time to rest, I don't have time to think about what I need for myself. Now you are dehumanizing yourself. Society already does that. But then we start doing that as well. So I just thought about something too.
Mhm.
So what I've also experienced and have heard from Black women and even from myself, there's a lot of anxiety about the election coming up, right?
Oh,
So people are like, what's going to happen? What's happening? Da, da, da. And Black women are so concerned about it, rightly so, rightly
mhm,
so.
mhm.
Do you think that concerns about the election might impede Black women in terms of resting, uh, activities to take care of themselves, and even giving themselves permission to go on a retreat, a healing retreat?
Absolutely. And some women even said, well, that's election week. And I was like, exactly. And they're like, it's a Friday. Why didn't you do it on a weekend? I said, because most of the professional Black women that I have encountered, there is something called mental health days, or there is something called sick leave. There's all kinds of ways. If somebody was sick in your family, if somebody needed X, Y, or Z, there's a way that you would take off that time. How about you
Right.
take that time off? And we were strategic because we knew that a lot of people also on that Monday have Veterans Day off. And so what we're trying to do is say, hey, look at your calendar. And if there's a way for you to get 3 days for yourself, 4 days for yourself, think about that. That is something you actually have control over. And we know the research is there to prove it, that these short bursts of vacation is so much more impactful to have them multiple times throughout the year than to wait, as you said, for that long, I'll get there in the sweet by and by.
Because by the time you get there, you're so exhausted. The first part of it, you're trying to rest. And then the dread, like the post-vacation dread. I see somebody in the chat wrote, absolutely, this election is making everyone a bit crazy. Yes. And I understand that, right? We all understand that it's just making us all feel some kind of way. We're all worried. But what we're also saying is at the same time, we still need to take care of ourselves. So no matter what, we always need to take care of ourselves as well. So tell us about the upcoming retreat, Dr. Armstrong. Tell us about it. So the dates, what's happening, where is it, how they get more information.
Yeah, so this retreat, so there's 4 retreats we do a year. This one is our fall retreat. It's a half-day retreat, and you can extend the retreat if you want to. So that option is there, but you can find all the information about the retreats at drtinaarmstrong.com. So if you go to our website, click on the events button, and you'll see the upcoming retreat.
Did you say dr.tina.armstrong?
Oh, Dr. Tina Armstrong, all one, no dot, just drtinaarmstrong.com.
Okay. I'm sorry.
And so, no, that's fine. So you will see the retreat, you see the event that's there. We are closing registration actually on the 31st. So you only got a few more days if you want to get in there. And if it happens to be full, put your name on the sheet still sign up. And then let me know that you heard about it on this particular live, and I will do my best to make sure that you get in the room because you are here right now. So if you hear this and you are able to get on, if you do it and it's closed, just say, hey, Dr. Tina, I heard you. And I'll do my best to make sure that you get in. But
awesome. I love that. Okay.
So Rooted is what we're studying. So Rooted is an acronym. And when I was doing the research, essentially we came up with 6 common things that we can all engage in to help reduce chronic stress. So the first one is resetting. So resetting is about pausing. It's about breathing. And then it is about re-engaging. So there's 3 actual steps to that practice that we will be going over in this Rooted retreat, in the half-day retreat. Now, why we're focusing on reset, because reset is the foundation. And it's something that we go back to over and over again in any given day. So we'll actually teach you practices that allow you to do that, as well as talk about the research behind it. But the rest of the Rooted acronym, the first O, is all about observation. So if you know anything about mindfulness, this is all the mindfulness research right here. It's about observing what's happening internally and how when we become aware of what's happening internally without judgment, as we become more curious, then we get to respond versus react. A lot of us stay in that reaction mode because we haven't done the work to figure out and become aware of what's happening. So then with that pillar, we focus on observation. Then the next one is orienting to joy, gratitude, and self-compassion. So it's all the research around what gratitude, all the practices around joy. But my favorite is self-compassion, because Black women, that's where we can grow.
True.
That is where we can go. So we do compassion holds. There's a number of things that I will teach you and that we will practice together that helps us to move into more of a compassionate state. When we talk about moving in a spirit of ease, it doesn't mean that everything's going to be easy, right? But it means that we show up like how water flows. We show up in a space and in a way that allows us to move and be gentle with ourselves first. Because if we're upset and angry and we're doing all that negative self-talk, then how are we going to make a decision? How are we going to move forward? It's going to be challenging. So the next O is orienting. How are you orienting? And we're suggesting that you orient to joy, gratitude, and self-compassion. Then the T is all about talking. It's about storytelling. It's about sharing our stories with intentionality. So it's not just talking to be talking, but we talk through how do you share your story for the purposes of healing. And then we go to E, which is exercise. And we think of exercise more as movement. So how are you engaging in movement? Because we believe that movement is health. Movement allows for health in our bodies. So how do you engage in that? We have a whole system about that. And then the final letter in the acronym is D. It's about disrupting stinking thinking and disrupting limiting beliefs. What are we telling ourselves? We are usually the biggest proponent of some of the difficulties that we encounter.
We become self-bullies.
Oh my goodness. We are big bullies on ourselves.
Yes.
Have a big old club that we are just
beating us down. Yes.
So at the retreat, we're not going to go through all of them because that usually is in our 2-day retreat. So in the fall, which is going to be our November 8th retreat, but November 8th is the date. It's from 9:30 to 12:30, and it's in Rancho Palos Verdes at a beautiful retreat center. So we will be in nature. We will be doing some things outside. We will be doing some things inside. We will be eating together. It's just going to be a great time. Women always rave about this particular retreat. We also do our full day retreat in March. And so the full day retreat we'll give an overview of each of the pillars, but we don't get to go in depth because it's like 6 hours and there's 6 pillars. So we don't go in depth, but you at least get an overview and you get to go away. Right. So you still get the retreat experience. It's not like a class. That's why I love retreats, because I'm like, you still learn, but you learn by experience.
And the one in March, how many days is that?
That is the 1 day. That's just the full day.
Okay. Yes. That's a full day. Okay.
But our 2-day retreat, that is always Juneteenth, the Friday and Saturday of Juneteenth. Because we're like, look, we're going to liberate. We're going to celebrate liberation, not just in body, but in mind. And so if you are not fully there, come on, join us. We will liberate. And that retreat is from sound healing to massage. So we really incorporate not only the principles, the pillars of Rooted. So we go through them, but then we also get to add some of the nervous system regulating components to that actual retreat. And then our new retreat this year that we are going to have every year, I've been waiting for this one. It's our International Sacred Spaces retreat.
Wow. So,
international. So I personally have gone to a variety of sacred places around the world and engaged in retreat. Most recently, I did the Camino Santiago Portuguese. So it's an ancient path that centuries ago Christians walked to go to, and it's called the way. Camino means the way. And it's amazing how it transforms. Like some people do the whole 400 something miles. That's not me. I did 100 miles.
Wow.
So, but I am proud of myself. I did 100 miles.
That's incredible.
And within that retreat, we start with a time of reflection. We start with stretching. We start with getting in tune with our bodies. And then we walk the journey. There's some talking points. There's some points of connection that you have. And so we really just wanted an opportunity. I actually co-lead that with a spiritual director. And what we noticed in all of our journeys is that when we go to these sacred spaces around the world, we don't see us. We are not there. Or if we are there, it's our international counterparts who are there. And so we want us to be there in these spaces, to hear, to experience, to be immersed in century-old places that bring healing.
And when is that one?
That one is going to be in August of 2025. Still nailing down the dates. It's going to be either the first, I'll just say still nailing down the dates. It's going to be the first or second week. And that one's 8 day.
Wow, 8 days.
But you can extend it. Yeah.
Okay. So the one in August, 8 days. Is there a location identified for that one already?
Yes, that's going to be the Camino. So we'll be flying into Spain. We'll be flying into Spain.
Oh, Spain. Okay. And then the one November that's coming up. So that's November 8th, half day, 9:30 to 12:30. That's in Rancho Palos Verdes in California, Southern California, right?
And the next two are Southern California too. So the full day Rooted retreat, that is March 21st. Let me double check. I believe that's the date that's coming to my head. March 21st, yes.
Okay.
And that will also be in Rancho Palos Verdes.
Okay.
And then I'm going to June 20th and 21st.
Okay. Okay. So, ladies, if you want to get more information, please check out the website that I have here, and I'll also put in the description section. And about how many Black women generally are in the retreat?
Yeah, it varies on the type of retreat because sometimes
Mm.
we offer them for different populations. But I think our typical average, we like to keep it on the smaller side so that women actually have an opportunity to engage, enjoy, connect. So not more than 35 is where we typically rest. Now, our international retreat, we're capping it at 16, and we already have people that are like, we want to go. Just because we want to keep that one really small because we'll be coordinating the housing, all this stuff. So we're keeping that
Okay.
one.
Okay. And can you share with the audience, those who maybe have never gone on a retreat or they're kind of thinking about it, they're quite sure, what have been some of the biggest transformations that you've seen for the Black women who've gone to retreats, or the biggest takeaways that they've said?
I think the biggest takeaway is I'm not alone.
Mm.
Second biggest takeaway is, oh, my spirituality also includes me being a good steward of my body and my emotional and mental health. So
Mhm.
seeing that as a more cohesive and integrated unit.
Mhm.
I think people walk away with just good friends that they continue to stay connected to, and there's a
Hmm.
community. So we do have a Facebook group that we
Oh.
also interact with. So that's Sisters Rooted. It's a private Facebook group. So we also interact in that.
Okay.
So that's another thing. But then also I had this really touching story from this woman who she was mid 50s. She had
Mhm.
been in her career for 25 plus years.
Mm.
Black woman in aerospace industry.
Wow.
And she had never been with so many Black women before and felt supported.
Wow.
The women that she had come in contact with, it was more of a adversarial kind of
Mm.
unfortunate situation.
Competitive.
Very competitive, very
Yeah.
competitive.
Yeah.
And so she was just in tears, and she was like, I don't even cry. She's like, but I think it's the emotional release that you experience by being with someone who gets your story and you feel understood. You don't feel
Yes.
alien. You don't feel foreign. You don't feel like you have to wear the mask. You actually get to check the mask at the door and
Wow.
show up as your authentic self.
How
And
liberating.
yeah, and be vulnerable and held.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Wow. Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
So Black women can access the information on the screen. So as we're winding down, Dr. Armstrong,
Yeah.
can you share about additional services that you offer and how you can be contacted?
Sure. So we offer individual therapy exclusively for Black women. We also offer digital courses. Our digital courses actually will go live in January. Yeah, January 2025. So be on the lookout. Make sure you join our newsletter because in our
Okay.
newsletter, it will have all the stuff. So if you go
Is
to
that
the
on the
website,
website?
that's the first thing that pops up. Join the newsletter and you will be in the know of all the things that are happening. And then, of course, we do these retreats. And then, I don't know if this is coming out good.
I can
Let's
see it.
see.
Yes, yes,
Here we
yes.
go.
I see it.
It's
Yes, that's a
Rooted. Woo,
beautiful
woo, woo.
cover.
Thank you. So this is Rooted, a Black woman's guide to overcoming stress. So this will be out in February. I'm still, look, you can see the red marks in there. So I'm still editing it. But
Excellent.
so that will be out. So if you happen to live somewhere far away where we have not been able to do a retreat for you, you
Uh-huh.
can get this book. You can hang out with a group of your favorite folks and you can work the book together and be able to learn some of the same things that we are doing and implementing in our retreats.
Wow. First, I want to say congratulations on your book.
Thank
And when it comes
you.
out in February, I want you to come back and talk
Okay,
about it. Okay.
absolutely. I will
That's
do that.
incredible. Okay. Very good. And you said digital products too? Some other digital
Yeah,
products?
so yeah, the digital products will be actually digital courses that you will be able to go through at a self-paced manner to be able to learn some strategies. And we're in the process of building the community. So that's why the digital course has not been released yet, because
Okay.
I believe that we should not be doing this work alone and in
Absolutely
silos.
not. No,
The
no.
efficacy of this work happens when we are connected. And that's why the
Mm-hmm.
business is called Living Connected. Because if
Mm.
we're not plugged in, it's like a light. A light could be
Mm-hmm.
an amazing thing. But if
Mm-hmm.
it does not have a power source,
True.
it is rendered useless.
True, true. I love your focus on community, and I love the multiple ways you support community. So,
Mhm.
not only in the retreats, but also in what you're working on in the Facebook community. There's so many different opportunities for us as Black women to heal in community. And what I also want to just highlight is some Black women have talked about having a history of negative experiences with other Black women.
Mhm.
And that has generalized to the belief that they can't trust other Black women, which is
Mhm.
very concerning.
Mhm.
And I can see how that can be generalized, but I really want Black women, if they've had that experience, to know that that's not all Black women. That's not all
Yes.
Black women. It may be those experiences. I've had some negative experiences with Black women, but I wouldn't generalize that all Black women are that way, because I've had phenomenal supportive relationships with Black women. I still do. So I
Mhm.
hope that Black women are able to say, just like this woman who came to retreat,
Yeah.
that was a leap for her.
It
If
was
she had those
huge.
negative experiences, but she took the leap because she
Mhm.
wanted a different experience, and she ended up getting that. And so even if you may have had negative experiences with other Black women, you're going to see that it's a small number. It's not all Black women, and you will have a different healing experience during the retreat. So please check it out. So again, everyone, give this video a thumbs up. Also, share this video with at least 2 other Black women. I'm going to ask Dr. Armstrong to come back again once Rooted comes out, once your book comes out, and check out the retreat. Okay. So again, the information is on the screen. You go to the website, get into the retreat, get on the newsletter so you know when more information is coming out. So in addition to sharing this video with at least 2 other Black women, if you haven't already subscribed to my channel, please do so and turn the notification bell so you know when I go on live. Okay. So everyone have a good day, and I will see you later. Dr. Armstrong, if you could stay on. Bye, everyone.
Bye.